Okay, so your name is pronounced Uta? Is
Ute.
that okay? Great. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. It's
Thank
really
you,
exciting to
Irene.
speak to you.
Yes. Well,
And
you are just one of my favorite go-to channels.
oh, wow, thank you.
Yes, because you are consistent. And one question I have for you is, have you been involved in any particular sport? Because you are such an advocate for women's sports.
Well, I grew up doing sports, so that's why I feel so passionate about it.
Yes.
And, you know, it really benefited me being able
Aha.
to get involved in sports. I
Hmm.
grew up in an inner city area, in London.
Aha.
So I did track.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yeah. And it did change my life. It really did impact my childhood in such a positive way.
Mhm.
So I couldn't imagine being, a young girl now, growing up in this current climate.
Right.
I just couldn't imagine it. So yeah, I did high jumping.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
I love to jump. I started seriously dancing when I was 14, and I would
Ah.
say that really changed my life too. But right before I started all the dance classes, across from the house I grew up in was the field, the athletic field of the school. It's both an elementary and a middle school. And they would leave the hurdles out there. And so I used to run around the track and practice track, and I loved the hurdles. I'm sure that I did them very inefficiently because I wanted to go high instead of just over.
I did hurdles too. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it though. I mean, I can't, the thing is, it's gotten so fast. They've all gotten so fast, you know. But
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I mean, there were some really wonderful Olympic athletes. Did you happen to watch the mixed 400?
I did see some of that.
Oh
Yeah. I've
my
never seen
God.
it
You know,
before.
because mixed is um, team of four, I think a team of four
Yeah.
with two men and two women. So I'm waiting for, the men who ideate a female persona to try to infiltrate the mixed.
Oh my
There's
goodness.
mixed biathlon, there's mixed tennis, there's mixed archery, and there's that mixed in track.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that the men would say, whoa, wait a minute. Only two men
Yes.
on the team or whatever it's supposed to be, and you have to be a real woman and da da da. And I'm sort of saying to myself, I wonder if that's why they haven't done it yet. Because they
Uh,
know that the men are going to say, no, 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 no. We know the advantage we have. But oh my goodness, I can't remember if it was the US team that got the gold, but the team, oh, those teams. Oh, I just, and um, I felt kind of bad about the whole situation with the Olympics and a ridiculous Fellini circus situation with the opening
yeah.
ceremony and then the male boxers competing in the women's and there were so many people making comments of, well, I'm boycotting the Olympics. And I put on my channel, my little channel, Trans Widow Ute Heggen, that please don't boycott. You can boycott those events that there are men in the women's category, but don't boycott the whole Olympics. And the women's gymnastic team, which by the way, men won't be able to do that. You won't find a man. I mean, it just can't happen. It can't happen with rhythmic
No.
gymnastics. And also, I don't think any woman could do the men's gymnastics either.
No.
In-
Yeah.
And and so those teams, I mean, the US team, I was especially just so proud of. And the thing is, I love the Winter Olympics too. And they have mixed, the skiing one, the biathlon, where they're shooting and then getting up and skiing. You have to look.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yes, it's really something because they have to calm their bodies down enough to shoot target and then go skiing off at top speed in the snow.
Wow.
This is from my grandfather's home country of Norway. It actually started as a practice sport for the home guard because they have such a um, long boundary, by the sea. And so to protect themselves with, Russia over there and so on, close by, they developed the home guard a little over 100 years ago, and or longer than that ago, but the sport I think is, maybe 140 years old. So
Wow.
yeah, and I also like you think about the phenomenon of cool running. Remember that?
Oh,
Are you
yes.
too young? I mean, I just, the whole thing, I mean, it was kind of hokey, right? But it really did happen, didn't it? Wasn't there a Caribbean team that went
Yeah.
to the
Based on a
Olympics?
true story. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, I just feel like, oh, don't take sports away from us. I feel like basically then if all these people are saying that they're going to boycott watching the Olympics, which is supposed to be this world unity event, that was why it was invented, that was the reason for it, you know, then that's just it's just so unfortunate. And
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, so nobody was thinking about the ramifications of men ideating a female persona, which
Yeah.
is what it is. So, I mean, one thing that I really like about watching you is that you don't swallow the BS captured language, you know? I
And
don't
it's
see.
hard with YouTube. You know how it is with their
Yes, I do. You're
yeah,
very careful. And
terms and
I
conditions.
also love what you say at the end, that you say, God willing, see you the next time. That is just so beautiful. I mean, I
Oh.
always try to bring in my flowers and say, and now go out in nature and cleanse your mind from all of this.
Yeah, because it is quite heavy. And,
I
if
know it
you're
is.
dealing with these sort of topics practically every day, you have to remember to step away
Yeah.
and focus on the good things that we, you know, are
Hmm.
blessed to experience as
Yes.
well. So,
And I will have to say that the way in which women like you and me are being brought together, I regard that as a blessing. I
yeah,
really do.
absolutely.
You are a blessing in my life, and I hope that I am a blessing in yours.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. So why don't you go ahead and get me going on our
Okay.
trans widow topic? Yes.
Yeah. So, do you call yourself a trans widow? And if so, where did that term originate from?
I think no one really knows where trans widow came from. Traditionally, there have been times when women whose husbands disappear every weekend to go play golf or who disappear to go to be watching the sports things and stuff like that have called themselves football widows or golf widows or something like that. And I don't even know when this started. I believe it's probably sometime in either the late 1980s or early 1990s. I thought it had been originated by a trans widow who goes by the pseudonym Tinsel Angel. She has a website called transwidowsvoices.org where she profiles, similarly to me, but she does it on a blog. She profiles women who divorced suddenly
Um,
cross-dressing men after their secret came out. And I wanted to think of some other name for us because I would rather be other than a widow, but it sort of all fits because they call their previous name, our ex-husbands call their previous names, which we have known them often for decades as, they call it the dead name. And
right.
so they kind of promote this morbid interpretation of, that their old self has died. And some of them even have these ceremonies where they go and bury stuff,
Wow.
their male self, right? And they make these rituals. Okay. And
Whoa.
so I in the subtitle of the memoir that I published, In The Curated Woods, True Tales from a Grass Widow, I thought maybe that in 2022, when I published this, that I could re-energize the very old term grass widow, which dates back to at least the early 1500s when women who were married but moved out and lived separately from their husbands for various reasons, but were honorable women somehow earning their own way and just living honorably and separately from their husband, they were called grass widows
Oh.
because there's no grave. There's no place where you put the flowers and are mourning your dead husband. And so women whose, I
Oh.
think also, there were among them women whose husbands abandoned them, but they couldn't find them to get divorced or something. So, but the term grass widow did not, uh, take, and I accept uh the category known as trans widow. I get
Okay.
really tired of, typing in the word trans. I also get tired of typing in the word gender. And when I'm
Oh, yeah.
writing, I can't even write like automatically as soon as I write GEN, if I'm trying to say something like generally speaking or something like that, then boom, those six letters. That's the habit of my fingers. So I'm really tired of the word trans and I'm really tired of the word gender. But I accept that this is the accepted colloquial term for us ex-wives. And
Yeah.
now there is this new documentary which I appear in, which is called Behind the Looking Glass. It was 3 years in the making by Indian uh, filmmaker Vaishnavi Sundar, and it is at her channel, Lime Soda Films. And why isn't it running in theaters the way it should be? Because it is truly an epic professional documentary. It is because she was canceled. She did originally a film called But What Was She Wearing? And that was about the rape culture in India. And then she got invited to places like Sundance and so on. Then she did a series. It was supposed to be a full-length documentary, but she turned it into a series called Dysphoric. And it was really about detransitioners and about this phenomenon of young women undergoing all these medicalizations because they don't feel like they want to be a woman. And she had felt like that because of the culture I just mentioned in India. She had felt like that as
Um,
a teenager. And so she experienced dysphoria. And so she submitted excerpts from this next work she made called Dysphoric to Sundance and to these other film festivals, and boom, she got canceled. Boom. That's it. We don't want to hear anything about this. And she's very, very professional and so on. And I think I was one of the first of us trans widows to get in touch with her after her series Dysphoric came out on Lime Soda Films. I
oh,
know that I'm the second woman that she interviewed. And there are 18 of us in the film, and she had to do animation for about half of us, the younger set, basically. Uh, some of the older women are even appearing under their own name, which of course Ute Heggen is a pen name. But I have already been trolled. There was someone who did some deep research and trolled my sons, and I think even contacted my ex-husband to say what a terrible individual I am because I'm talking about what women like me go through. So, So we do really have to protect ourselves because of the corporate internet entities, which are very much influenced by, especially these ex-husbands of ours who now identify as, okay, transgender. And and so you know, they are using their power through their tech work, and my ex-husband is one of those. He just recently retired. He's 60, he's 69 now.
Yeah.
And like one thing that's interesting is when I started work in late 2020 on my memoir, I just really decided this is a story that has to be told. And suddenly I'm noticing it. There was a gradual thing that kind of accelerated. It started an attitude that
Uh,
started in 2015. That's sort of like a watershed year when suddenly being trans was the big trend. And attitudes towards women were quite derogatory. And then attitudes towards women who are trying to hang on to women's rights and women's separate spaces by our fingernails. We are being treated very derogatorily. We're being canceled. We're being threatened. All of everything that you've seen in the sports world. Um, and so by 2020, and then there was, I guess it was the business against J.K. Rowling started.
yes.
I
Anybody who spoke up
Right,
in
right.
the
And I
public
was
eye.
completely unaware of that. And interestingly, my ex-husband, who identifies as a woman, and actually also identifies as the mother of our two sons, he used to read. He read every Harry Potter book to our kids. That was the read aloud before bed that he did. And I was so careful not to, get a copy myself and then take over when they came back from that weekend over there. And so, but I wonder because I mean, my kids were really into it and they went to all the movies. And so I really wonder, you know, what, how their evolution is with, a favorite childhood author.
Yeah.
And, and also, I think with all of this, aggressive attitude towards any woman who just is saying, yeah, but you didn't find that spot on your underwear when you were 13 or 14 years old and say, Mom, what's going on? You didn't have that experience and you're not a woman. You're not allowed to say that. But that's a biological fact, and that is something that is part of the sisterhood. And so, um, yeah. And so I started writing the book thinking that, okay, I will use male pronouns for him from when I met him in 1976 until uh, he really started officially identifying as female and came back from having the surgeries. And then I thought, well, then I'll start saying she. I'll try to make this, politically correct or whatever. And as I was writing, I realized I can't do this. I can't do this. And then as I was writing, I became aware of channels like yours, and I became aware of Kelly J. Keane and Sharon Davies, I think her name is in the
The
UK,
swimmer.
swimmer.
Yeah.
And I just and I just became more aware of how this is not just my personal tragedy. And what I find is that uh, a wide segment of even feminists and even those who want to, advocate for women's sports, a wide segment of those people are hesitant to start talking about trans widows because, oh, that's divorce. Okay, so you got one of the bad ones. Well, that's your personal tragedy. You're just, it's like, oh, the ex-wives club or something like that, right? And the fact is, no one has done any research on us and what we experience. And typically, um, though there are women who stay, but they're still not very involved with the mental health professionals who are, you know, their patient is the guy. And so, first of all, the guys, and I mean that plural, their behavior is not thoroughly documented because what they say they do while they're sitting in the therapist's office with the little floofy dog on their lap, and the therapist is, you know, uh, sympathizing with how someone misgendered them at the pharmacy when they're picking up all their pills and patches and creams and goodness knows what else. And and they're not, saying, gee, did you actually push your wife down the stairs the other week? Is that something I heard? Because
Yeah.
my data, I started keeping data then, I guess it was 2 years ago when I started my channel. And before that, 2.5 years ago, I started my blog, which is all one word, Ute Heggen, grasswidow.wordpress.com. And the thing is, I will never monetize. I know I would get my word out to more people if I did a Substack and did subscribers and all this stuff. And I don't monetize on my channel. And this is what the troll today was accusing me of, getting rich off of this and calling myself an expert. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not getting rich off of this because I don't monetize. I paid to have my book um, self-published from a really great publisher, iUniverse.com. And and I paid extra because I wanted to put 50 of my nature photos from my gardening in the book because I really saw how this process of writing about it and then being out in nature and problem solving with, oh, these weeds came back up. I better, do a better mulch or, move this plant or something like this. That was taking me away from this distress. And I had developed really full-blown PTSD with panic attacks, thought that I had a heart condition actually. And I was afraid to talk about it with doctors because I was afraid that somehow my children might talk to my ex about it if indeed these chest pains were heart condition, and then he would start to say that I'm not physically fit enough to have custody of our children. So, you know how it is with a woman who has suffered domestic abuse.
And that's
You,
the thing that
yeah,
I feel people aren't understanding when it comes to the issue of trans widows, that it's a form of abuse that you've been through.
right,
And
right.
it's a situation that only situation I can think of is where the abuser is treated like the victim.
Oh, yes. Yes, but have you heard of DARVO? That's a psychological concept. It's an acronym for deny, attack, reverse, victim, and oppressor. And so
Ah,
this is what narcissists do. They switch roles.
wow.
They preempt anything you're going to say by claiming the victimhood first, right?
Yeah.
And my attitude towards any of these guys, and also kind of the young women who are trying to take on an opposite sex persona, is, you're going to have to get over yourself because, and what's really hard is the doctors aren't telling the truth. And the
Yeah.
psychologists and all the mental health people are not telling the truth. what the mental health people did was they went immediately into this political schema. And and it was, well, we have to then work for those rights. Like I remember saying to him when I first discovered, that he was really serious about this. Finally, after 2 years of really up and down, and I left, I was coerced to come back. He grew a beard, which I guess doesn't matter now, but for him it did. And um, but um it's all so much, and what it looks like is a cult.
Yeah.
And it is a cult that for some reason has medical um, sanctification and advocacy. And partially that's because a lot of these, especially the men, are very smart and and clever. And
So your ex-husband had the operation and everything.
oh yes,
Did he do
yes.
that after the divorce or?
He did that in the middle of the divorce.
Oh,
And his psychologist, the one who sent him with the important letter to the surgeons, then submitted a sworn affidavit into the divorce process in which she claimed that it was because of my insistence that our marriage is over. My rejection of him, that was her word. My rejection of him, and this is her word, forced, and I use the word Nettie, forced Nettie, for that's his pen name in my world, forced Nettie to decide to live full time as a woman. So, in the minds of these therapists back in the 1990s, uh, they were gaslighting the wives and uh, trying to get us to stay because they didn't want to get the reputation of the mental health professionals or practitioners. I don't really want to call them professionals, I just call them practitioners who are wrecking marriages. And so, you know, I remember actually that affidavit that she sent in that was, just a mere 5 pages. That was very expensive for me because I learned
wow.
actually that because at that time, I had this sort of uh in a way family friend who was an attorney. He didn't do that much divorce, but I thought he was sympathetic and so on. But he was so angry when this came in that he was stomping around his office, reading it over and over again. And I felt like I was then giving him therapy and saying, okay, now look, we just have to strategize. Like every sentence he's saying, every stomp of his feet and reaction that's normal that he's having is costing me money. Because, I mean, back then it was only like, I don't know, $243 an hour, right? For an attorney. And uh the fact that you have to answer, you know, a sworn affidavit like that when actually I served papers. This was I served papers I guess in 1990. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I discovered, the last straw in spring of 1995. The first part of my discovery process was in 1992 when I discovered his three large format sketchbooks that were his cross-dressing diaries. And
Oh.
um, I had tried to figure out what was going on and found these in his suitcase. And I feel that any wife who suspects that her husband is sexually cheating on her has the right to read his diaries because he came back from a business trip to San Francisco with all of his body hair shaved off. And
Oh,
he had this wiry red hair. Uh, and and it was noticeable to me right away. And it was part of, my physical attraction to him was his maleness with his, he wasn't like super hairy, but he had hair on his arms and legs and chest and stuff. And that carries, it's about pheromones. It carries, sexual pheromones,
yeah.
and our sense of smell is part of the arousal process. And so he wouldn't answer me. He told me this was just his new look and it was for swimming or something. It made him faster or, it was like he started making various excuses. He was sort of pulling them out of the air. And we were at his parents' apartment in Chicago. I had brought our 1-year-old and 4-year-old from New York City to meet and have a so-called vacation. And we were actually going
Wow.
then up to Wisconsin and going to my niece's wedding. So this is this like I looked, I fit my dress really nicely because I really couldn't eat for the next week. I was forcing myself to eat, and all these things started going through my mind. For example, um, I was nursing my 1-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah. So uh I was thinking, well, we have, this is, 1992. We have this disease called AIDS, and what is he doing? And when was the last time we had intercourse without protection? And, uh, you know, what could I possibly be passing? I didn't know. I honestly still don't know if AIDS can be passed through breast milk. But so this is not, I mean, this would surely go through the mind of any woman who finds out that in some way her husband is betraying her, right? With sexual affairs or
Yeah,
that thing. Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, but Uh, so there I am in the apartment, and uh, he and my children and my mother-in-law are out in the park. My father-in-law is actually in the next door room in his home office. He was a freelance writer, and and I'm sitting there. I realized I have to sit down. I feel like I'm going to faint, and the thing is, they encourage you to write about everything. You have to get all of your resentments out, so he's writing about how resentful he is of me and how nosy I am, and he's resentful of our so intelligent, wonderful 4-year-old who said such clever things, but he was in that why stage. Then you would say this logical answer, well, it's because this and da, 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 da. And then the kid says, oh, but why? Right? And I later became a pre-K teacher, a kindergarten teacher, early grade science, and so on. And I love that, right? So that's what we are here to do. We're here to say, oh, why? Why is right? That's
Yeah.
science. And I couldn't believe it. And so I mean, my assumption was, okay, so he wants to leave. He wants to leave us, you know. But then after said to him, I understand now why you shaved off all your hair and how you want to be someone different and stuff. And so I don't really see how this is going to work out. I mean, you're going to have to move out. I'll try to have, we can try to have an amicable divorce. I mean, like there I am. I've got these little kids and stuff. I've been out of the workforce for 4 years. And he says, no, no, no. That's why I went to Ruth. And there's this non-certified uh, so-called therapist, practitioner. In my memoir, I call her Ruth the Charlatan because she said that she specialized in keeping the families together. And
Wow.
and my words, gaslighting the women that, you don't want this divorce to be your fault. And, you know, if you can accommodate each other, you know, as if this is just some minor thing in, you know, lovemaking or something, you know, positions or something like this. But this is, you know, he wants to dress up and act out some kind of pornographic scene whereby he's being a female. And typically, all too often, they have these subjugation fetishes. And so what I think is interesting is with Will dash Leah Thomas, the fetishes came out.
Yep.
They surfaced. And so, and there have been so many times, and then the one about Chris Tyson of Mr. Beast.
Yes.
You know.